welcome. This is John Corcoran with Dr. Jeremy Weiss, my friend and business partner, and this is live, and I am the host of the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where I talk with CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of companies and organizations like YPO, EO, Activation, Blizzard, Lending Tree, Open Table Act Software, and many more. I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And I'm excited because we're turning around the tables here, and I'm interviewing my business partner, Jeremy. Jeremy has been featuring top entrepreneurs with video interviews since 2011, including the founders and CEOs of P90X, Atari, Einstein Bagels, Mattel, the Orlando Magic, and many more. He has his own chiropractic and massage facility in downtown Chicago, also the founder of a nutritional supplement business, also created one of the top chiropractic jobs websites on the web, and has been working with podcasters since 2009, including one of the early successful business podcasts. He's also one of the most giving humans that I know and most well-connected humans that I know, in large part due to doing the podcast for so many years. So we're going to be diving in this quick live episode, talking about some of the top questions that we get around using podcasts and content marketing to grow your network, to get ROI, to connect with high caliber referral partners and clients and strategic partners and all that kind of stuff. But first, before we get into that, look, I don't need to tell you that the world has changed. We all know that. The next question is what to do about it. And in this economy, it's more important than ever to be able to connect and build strong relationships with clients, referral partners, and strategic partners, even if you can't be face-to-face. And at Rise 25, we have 20 years of experience in the B2B space, connecting and building profitable relationships with clients, referral partners, and strategic partners using a podcast. We have hundreds of B2B businesses who are getting more clients and referrals and landing collaborations with dream clients thanks to the work that we do. And it's really fulfilling work. You want to learn more about it and how you can benefit from a B2B podcast, go to rise25media.com, or you can email us at support@rise25media.com. We're always happy to connect with you. All right, so Jeremy, let's dive in here. And we've got 3 or 4 questions and just about enough time to dive into these questions. And so first, let's just jump right into it. Question number 1, how do I get downloads and subscribers for my podcast? How do I grow my podcast audience? Probably the most common question we get. How do you tackle this one?
First of all, thanks for having me. And I didn't know what we were doing. You just told me to show up. So, but yeah, that is probably the most common question we get, which is how do you get downloads and subscribers? And we take a very polarizing view on this. And you are more, I guess, intricate in your answer, and my initial response is always, who cares? I mean, that's kind of where we draw a line in the sand. And then people are like, well, downloads matter. Like, what do you mean? Can't you, so you're better at articulating this.
A little more nuanced answer.
Yeah, you're nuanced. Yeah. And what I mean by that is, because I just overemphasize that piece. Yes, downloads are great, and downloads will happen. And when you you get amazing guests who are referral partners, strategic partners, and people in your industry, you're going to create amazing content, and they're going to spread it, and you're going to get downloads and viewers. But what's more important is who's listening to your podcast. I told someone the other day, they help, let's say, B2B manufacturers. I go, if you get 1 million downloads and you want someone who's a manufacturer, how many of those people are actually manufacturing companies? Do you really care if you get 1 million downloads?
So what you're saying is more about the caliber of the
listeners. It's a caliber of the people listening.
People.
But more importantly, what we talk about is the actual guest you have on is the most important part. That's the biggest relationship you want to give to. And what we have seen over the past decade is we've seen no better way to give to our relationships than to have a podcast. And so, yes, downloads, subscribers are great. What's better is downloads and subscribers who are specific to your industry. What's better is making a really amazing connection and giving to them when you have them on your show, and that's really where the foundation starts, is having amazing guests that are going to serve the audience with great content and are going to serve your business and serve your relationships.
I think another way that I like to say it is it's really not just about the downloads. A lot of times people fixate on that one piece, and that's one of 100 different ways in which a podcast can be really valuable to people. And so we just try and get people to see the vision that there are additional ways in which you can benefit regardless of the downloads. Or another way I put it is if you ask most people who've been doing a podcast for a period of time, like a number of years, they will tell you they would continue to do it even if no one was listening. So yes, of course, we value downloads, we value listenerships, and that sort of thing.
Actually, I don't. I mean, I really don't. And the funny thing is, I don't. You're more, better at. I feel like if you don't draw the line in the sand, you're not polarizing enough. People don't listen. So yeah, like I really have not checked my stats in 5 years. Like I don't look at downloads at all. Like I have not looked at it in 5 years, John, because it does not matter to me. I don't care so much about downloads. I care about giving to the person on the other end and featuring them, and that will happen organically. But anyway,
I feel like I'm kind of like the Obama interpreter. I don't know if you ever saw the sketch of Key and Peele. So I'm going to be the Obama interpreter here. What Jeremy's saying here is he does value his listeners. It doesn't sound like he's saying it, but he actually does.
No, I mean, value the listeners, but I don't care about downloads. Like right. I value the listener. That's a different story. I want it to be amazing content for the listener, but I don't track downloads. Like to me, that's not important.
Yeah, that's a good point. So before we move on to the next question, a couple other points that I think we should point out is, if your focus is just on downloads and not thinking about the other advantages to it, oftentimes it leads to disappointment because there are larger media companies with big budgets. And the only way they have to monetize their business is through downloads and advertising. And so they will throw a lot of money at this, ESPN, NPR, that kind of thing. They will advertising, spend, that sort of thing in order to get downloads because they're monetizing with ads. Whereas you, the B2B business owner, have got other ways to monetize the business and to make it profitable for you. And so we don't want people to get disappointed by getting too focused on that. So I haven't checked my downloads in a long time. I'm not quite as afraid of them as Jeremy is here, but I don't check them because I know that rarely are they what you want them to be, and it doesn't matter. And by the way, the other point is that the other reason that people think downloads are important is because of getting guests. They might not articulate it this way, but they think you need to get a lot of downloads in order to get good guests. But the truth is, one, there isn't great transparency about downloads. Apple's about half the downloads out there, and they don't publish download numbers. So people don't know what your download stats are. It's not like you have to reveal them to anyone. And if you position it right, when you approach big name guests, you won't have trouble getting larger name guests because what you do is you stair step your way up. You get others that they maybe respect or know and get them as guests. So by the time you go to a subsequent person, you list some of the other guests you've had, and they're not asking about your download numbers because they're like, oh, you've had that person on as a guest? Then I'll be a guest. So I think that's another
It becomes a social proof element.
Yeah, but I think that's one of the reasons people ask about downloads, even if they don't realize it. But that's one of the ways you overcome that challenge. Yeah, exactly.
Well, John, let me give you an example. Let me just clarify. Okay, like if you could get lots of downloads, that's awesome. But what I mean by quality over quantity, right? I care more about giving to the guest. So let's give an example. I had Kevin Thompson on the podcast the other day. And I don't check downloads, so I don't know how many people is it going to reach. But what I care about is who are the individual people that should be listening to Kevin's message. So when the episode is on, we did the live stream on Facebook. So there's certain people who, he's running Tribe for Leaders. And I'm like, there's certain people I know in my network that should probably check out what he's doing. So all I did was I simply tagged them in that interview post and said, hey, Eric, hey, Joe, we talked about you. And some really high-level entrepreneurs I tagged in that post to give to Kevin. I didn't need to wait to publish it even to iTunes to get a bunch of download subscribers to give to him for the interview. So I think it's just important. I look at more important is how do I, filter specific people to my guests that would be valuable for them And
Yeah.
that's where my mind goes, is really, how do I give to them? And
Yeah. And that really adds up over time is the other thing, is when you do that with discipline for the episodes that you do, then you're leveraging a lot of relationships over time. It really starts to snowball and accumulate. Let's move on to the next question. So next question. Isn't it really time consuming to do a podcast? Like, how do you create a podcast when there's so many other things that you need to do? How do you find the time?
Yes, it is. That's why we created what we did. But like, in the very beginning, John, both of us would do everything.
Yeah.
We would do absolutely everything. And I wanted to bang my head against the wall. And over time, we put a team in place to take all the pieces off of our table. And what I always tell people is there's two things we want a business owner doing when it comes to podcasting. One is building the relationship. Two is running their business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And we have a team that we've delegated everything else. And for a number of years, John, people are like, Jeremy, will you help me launch mine? And I'm like, no, it's so much work. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do it. And then after, 4 years, are like, okay, we put together a rock solid team. We have the systems down. And that, even then, I'm like, we'll take on a few people just to see how this is, like, a lot of, how much work this is. And so the answer is, if you do it right, it's not time consuming at all. Because
I would even go further than that. I say, I firmly believe a podcast saves you time if you do it right, if you delegate the pieces that you should not be focusing on so you can focus on the highest and best use of your time. I have 4 young kids. You have young kids as well. And the reason I've continued to do a podcast for 10 years is because I know if I were to quit doing my podcast, everything would be so much more time consuming. It would be so much more time consuming to connect with high caliber people. It'd be so much more time consuming to deliver value to my existing client base and referral partners who I can feature and edify on a podcast. It'd be so much more time consuming to speed up the client sales cycle and onboarding process by creating content that, like we are right now, that goes onto my podcast that I can share over and over again, that people can consume and people can find me from even years into the future. And so I know that a podcast actually, ultimately, if you do it right, the way that we do it, is a huge time saver, not an additional time burden. And I think people need to understand that.
John, the other thing is you are already having conversations with people in your industry, your best referral partners, your best strategic partners, your best clients. So it doesn't take any more time. And if you're not, you should be, right? So in a given week, if you have 3, 4, 5 conversations with your referral partners, strategic partners, or clients or past clients, well, you can actually record that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's already in your schedule.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I think people don't appreciate that, how many conversations they do have that you could be using it. And that's why I say when you do a podcast, you have to integrate it into what you're doing already. So you're already doing business development. You're already talking to people, referral partners, clients, past clients, that sort of thing. Integrate it into that process so it doesn't take any additional time. We've got a couple more questions here before we wrap up. I know you have to go in a second, Jeremy, but so another question people frequently ask is, what tools should I use? What microphone, what recording software, kind of a technology and equipment question.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
I mean, that's also a big question, and we can answer it in, 30 seconds because we really want people focusing on who are the best people to feature and how do you give to those people. And so the answer is really simple. I mean, the technology is going to change, right? When we started podcasting, we tell people just keep it simple and use whatever you use now to do meetings and do recordings. That's it. And people are going to use in a week, 6 months, what we were using 10 years ago is not what we're using today. And what we may use in 6 months may not be what we use today. So whatever you're using, like if you meet on a certain conference line, video conference, audio conference, they have a recording feature. And just use it. And people say, well, is audio quality going to be good enough?
Yeah. My response to that is, look, no one ever quit doing a podcast because their audio quality wasn't good enough. They quit because they didn't get return. And so that's really what you need to focus on. Now, I do believe, like, you don't want to do it You don't want to be in an echoey kitchen. You don't want to be out on a busy street when you're recording these podcast interviews. There needs to be a certain baseline of quality. We recommend buying, a microphone.
All you need is a USB microphone that literally plugs into the computer. I've used this Blue Yeti mic what you're looking at right now for 10 years.
Yeah, and I'm using an Audio-Technica ATR 2100, which I've used for 10 years as well. Yeah, but I mean, it drives me crazy because I see people sometimes in forums or talking, and they're like, I've been doing this podcast for a year, 2 years, and I'm not getting really a lot out of it. I think I need to buy a new microphone. And it's like, if you think that's going to solve your problems, that is not the solution.
John, it's
I think I need new recording software. It's like, that is not going to solve your problem.
It's similar to this, right? It's if you take, you're playing basketball and you're like, my game's been off. I think I just need a new pair of shoes. Well, no. Right. You just need to practice. You need to do the right things to make it the most impactful, right? It's not the shoes. Maybe Michael Jordan would beg to differ, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think we're running short on time here. I do want to shout out to Gloria Chu, who's here. Gloria, good to see you here. Gloria, who recently connected with one of our clients, Stephanie Sims, through the podcast, which is amazing. They're doing a webinar together, which is coming up pretty soon. Nice. So go check her out, look her up on LinkedIn, and you can see the webinar they're doing about how to get free PR, which is really cool. Jeremy, where can people go to learn more about you, connect with you, and learn more about Rise 25?
You can go to rise25.com. People say they like our video because we're like an old married couple bantering. So you can watch that on the homepage. And you go to just rise25.com or contact us if you have questions about podcasting. We're happy to answer them anytime. So support at rise25media.com for any questions you have about podcasting. We're happy to answer them.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.